Hello everyone, welcome to Everything Arsenal. Let's get to the latest transfer news. David Ornstein has confirmed that this will be an eye-catching transfer window for Arsenal. Those are words we love to hear. Atletico Madrid, you won't believe this. This is not a joke. I wish it was, but Atletico Madrid want 500 million for Julian Alvarez. You had that right. 500. 500 million for Alvarez. That is what they want. They want his release clause paid, and that is what his release clause is. We'll be talking about that. And then also latest on the two players that you wanted to sign, or the young players that you want to sign. That's Monga and Mbemba. I'm going to catch the names very, very soon. And also the latest on Jesus and Trossard. It looks like you're going to receive a bid for Trossard very, very soon. So that will be very interesting. So let's get into the David Ornstein one. By the way, the transfer window officially opens next week, and we'll have more than one video when the transfer window officially opens, and the live shows will be back. For now, let's keep it at one, and let's check out the latest news from today. So David Ornstein, a couple of days ago, he was asked, which Premier League club are you expecting to be the busiest this summer? He gave an answer. Obviously, we expect the likes of United to be busy, Chelsea to be busy, potentially Man City to be busy, Liverpool maybe to be busy, the likes of Aston Villa. We expect all of those teams to be busy. But David Ornstein's answer was they all have different requirements, but I think Arsenal will do some eye-catching business. I don't think their volume will be the biggest, but maybe their quality will. Now, what he's basically trying to say here is, so last summer we spent 250 million on 7 players. If you add Nkapie to that list, because Nkapie's money we're going to pay this summer, if you add Nkapie to last summer, we basically bought players worth 300 million plus. The likes of Eze, Zubimendi, Gyökeres, all of them cost more than 50 million. And it ended up being 250 million and then 300 million plus if you add Nkapie there. So that was 8 players for 300 million. So what David Ornstein is saying here is we're not going to sign 8 players this time. We know we don't need 8 players this time round. We've already been told that you're going to sign 4 players. So what he's basically saying is that 300 million, we might end up spending the same 300 million this transfer window, but this time not 8 players. It could be just 4 players. So all that means is we could get a player for 90 million, get another player for 80 million, get another one for, a couple of others for 50 each. That could be the case for this transfer window. So we could be looking at a 50 million right back. We'd be linked to players like Livramento. If we go for players like Rogers, that could be 80, 90 million. So that makes sense. If you go for left winger, that could be the same price. You're talking 70, 80 million. And the players we've been talking about, the likes of Krupi and players like that, they're going to be expensive. All of them 70, 80 million. That is very exciting. That never used to be Aston back in the day. For various reasons, we had problems with the stadium and debts and paying the stadium. But Arsenal never a team that could spend that kind of money. Now we can. Now we're making the Champions League semi-final regularly. We are competing for the Premier League regularly. We are earning a lot of money, and we can actually spend on a lot of different players. We can spend a lot of money, not like back in the day where, we had to watch Chelsea and Man City splash in the cash while we could only buy Arshavin for like 15 million. And even the Arshavin one was assisted. We had to get money from elsewhere as well. So we're not that team anymore. Right now, we can afford to splash 105 million for Rice. The next transfer window, same transfer window, you could splash 65 for Harvard, another 50 for Timber. The next transfer window, you could go and pay 50 million for Calafiori. The very next transfer window, you can go and pay 50 million for Madueke, 67 for Eze. And this time round, it's looking like you're going to do the same to go to the next level. Now, Man City do that all the time. Man City even do it in January. 2 seasons ago, Man City went and bought Marmoush and Nico Gonzalez for like 200 million in one January transfer window. Maybe not 200 million, 150 million. And then this last January transfer window, they went again and splashed the cash for Gay, splashed the cash for Semenyo. So to keep on competing with those teams, and the teams like Real Madrid who are about to, who want to spend 150 million on a player, you have to keep on signing. You have to keep on improving. And that is what we want. That is what we want. And the players that we want, the players who are going to take us to the next level, they're not going to be 20 million. You're going to get a few gems here and there, like Gabriel and Mosquera and those guys. But especially attacking-wise, you're going to need pay money. The likes of Kvaratskhelia and the likes of Rogers, you're not going to pay 30 million for them. If you want to go to the next level, you have to pay a lot of money for those players, and that is what you're going to need to do. So it's looking like this transfer window will be another interesting one. You're going to have back-to-back interesting transfer windows. Last time, We were focusing on, Zubimendi 1 week. The next week it's Kepa. The next week it's Madueke. The next week it's we're talking about Gyökeres. The next week you're talking about Hincapie or Eze. The next, like, we're talking about a lot of players last transfer window, but it worked. We probably our best season in the Emirates era, definitely our best season in the Emirates era, considering we won the league, considering we reached the Champions League and the Carabao Cup and also the FA Cup. We were so close to reaching a final in all 4 of those competitions, all 3 of those cup competitions, plus winning the league. So that would have been crazy. But that David Ornstein says this time around might be even more fun for us. We could end up signing only 4 players, and all of them could be, statement signings. That is very exciting. Now, speaking of statement signings, I was talking about 300 million to spend. Atletico Madrid want 500 million for Alvarez. If we go and sign Alvarez for 500 million, that would be the biggest transfer in football history, probably sports history. And that would be mad, absolutely crazy. If you spend, that is basically your budget for 3 transfer windows if you do that. So what is the latest on Julian Alvarez? So yesterday, Real Madrid made a bid of 150 million euros for Alvarez. It was rejected. And Atletico Madrid said they want the 500 million euro release clause to be paid. Now, just like yesterday, as I said, is that because it's Real Madrid, they don't want to sell him to them and they're making, crazy figures? Because a couple of seasons ago, I remember the guy called Samu Omorodion. He was leaving Atletico Madrid and Chelsea, about to sign him for 35 million. It failed. And then I think a couple of days later, he ended up joining FC Porto for 13 million, literally like 25 million less 2 days later. So the English teams sometimes get charged more. Maybe that is the case with Alvarez. Maybe because it's Real Madrid wanting Alvarez, Atletico Madrid are like, no, you know what? We want 500 million for him. But maybe if they talk to a team from outside Spain, we could be talking the 100 million. But if they definitely want the release clause paid, it's 500 million euros. Now, you can do negotiations for that, but it all depends on a lot of things, Is that your priority signing? Is that where you want to spend a lot of money in? Is that particular player wanting to join you? Does he want to stay in Spain, just like Nico Williams a couple of seasons ago? Does he prefer going to Barcelona? Does Barcelona, want to pay for him as well? Does Real Madrid want to go all in for him? There's a lot of things you have to look at, but 500 million is too crazy, man. There's even prime Cristiano Ronaldo combined with prime Messi. That would be like 450 million. Not 500 million. So 500 million for one player. 500 million for one player, that is a player who wants to come and, score 100 goals for you and win you all 4 trophies back-to-back seasons, and then you'll feel like the money has been returned. But, imagine spending 500 million on a player and then he comes and gets injured like the way Timber did in 2023. Like the way Liverpool spent 150 million on Isaac and then he came and didn't hit the ground running and got injured. It's like too risky of an investment. You just don't do that. So 500 million, that is too crazy. Let's go to more. Before that, my priority is a left winger anyway. I want us to get to spend that kind of money on a left wing and a player like Rodgers. And then for a striker, we will see. Gyökeres will still be here next season. Havertz will still be here next season. Mourinho will still be here next season, I think. Jesus is not going to be here, so we're going to have to replace him. So it all depends. Does Mateta and does Andrea Bata, do they feel like we need another striker potentially to replace Gyökeres? Do they just want a backup for Gyökeres? How are they looking at it? Like, we have to consider all of that. But for me, that kind of money, we need to spend it on a left winger. That is a position we've looked at for a long time. And also someone like a Morgan Rogers will be linked to players like Gibbs White. Let's see how it goes. So that is the latest on Alvarez. Now, more attainable players. These two. According to Graham Bailey, Arsenal are closing in on deals to sign a pair of youngsters, Leicester City winger Jeremy Monga and PSG defender Emmanuel Mbemba. So we talked about these 2 players already. Jeremy Monga plays for Leicester. Leicester, who've now been relegated to League One. He's only 16 years of age, and I think that's the right age. He's very, very good. He's played, I think, 16 years. He's played really well for them on the left wing. Since the Premier League days, he played under Van Nistelrooy a couple of games, and then in the Championship, and then now they've been relegated. It's going to cost a bit of money, but again, we are trying to build for the future as well. We're trying to dominate now and also build for the future, and building for the future is having players like Jeremy Monga and having players like Mbemba and having players like Mosquera and having players like Dauman. That is what you need in your team to keep on building, Jesus is not going to be here forever. Trossard is not going to be here forever. Raya is not going to be here forever. All these players are not going to be here forever. Players are approaching 30. Some of them are already 30. They're not going to be here next very, very long or forever. They're not going to be here forever. So Joey Monga is a tricky winger who we can add to the team. Potentially is not going to be part of the first team. There's talks about him being loaned out straight away. So let's see. Emmanuel Mbemba is another one. PSG under 19 captain. So he knows the leadership. He knows how to be part of a winning team. Not sure how many times he's been part of the first team setup, but he's been in and around that camp. So he's a defender. Let's see if that one can also get done. Another one that you're talking about potentially being loaned out, just like Saliba, we're hearing that they want the same structures, the one that Saliba had, buy him, send him back on loan. Saliba went to 3 teams, Saint-Etienne, Marseille, and Nice before he came back to Arsenal, and he came back as the best defender in the world. So let's see if Mbemba can do the same in a couple of years on loan, and then he comes back as a 20-year-old, and then we see how he does. So those are 2 cheaper ones, not like Alvarez, but let's see how those ones develop. Now, let's talk about 2 players who might end up leaving, and there's news on Leandro Trossard. So according to reports from Turkey, Besiktas will make an official offer to Arsenal for Leandro Trossard. Transfer conditions: 20 million euro transfer fee, and then 7 to 8 million salary for the player, annual salary. So I have to calculate that and see how much that is per week for him. So 8 million, let's see, divided by 52, right? Let's see. So that is around 150,000 a week. That's not too bad for if Trossard goes and gets that there. The fee, though, is that like 16, 17 million pounds. I'd like us to get almost the same money that we paid for him. I mean, the age is a negative factor for us, but he's still a player that has delivered. Since he joined Arsenal from Brighton, he's actually been improving. He was very good at Brighton, but you could say he's maybe stayed on the same level or even improved. The number of big goals Trossard has scored for us, like, he's worth that money. He's definitely worth that money, or more than that. I know the age is a factor, but if they gave us like 25 million pounds, I'd be like, okay, you know what, that's a good investment, especially if he doesn't want to stay and wants to move on to a new challenge in his latter years. Then we can see what happens after that. But for now, I don't know. Would you guys accept 20 million euros for Trossard? Do you think that is good enough? Let me know. So Besiktas look like they're going to make in terms of the salary, that is a good offer for him. He's not going to take a massive hit like the one he has at Arsenal. Actually, let me just recently actually added the salary terms, so I'm confusing the new salary terms and the old one, because he signed a new contract last year. He didn't add the length of his contract, but he added in terms of the salary. So Trossard is on 180,000 per week, so that will be like a 30,000 hit. That's not too bad for a player who's around that age, and right now he's the eighth highest paid Arsenal player at the moment. So quite interesting. Next up, Jesus. What's the latest on Jesus? This is the latest on Gabriel Jesus. Juventus have sounded out a potential transfer for Gabriel Jesus. Arsenal could let him go for 20 million euros to 25 million euros, almost the same as the Trossard one. The striker is liked by the Bianconeri, but he's not the first choice. Higher up, the names of Colomwani, Soloth, Mateta, and Gonzalo Garcia are named. Gonzalo Garcia, I'm sure that is the Real Madrid striker. Mateta has been good for Crystal Palace. Soloth has been okay for Atletico Madrid. Mwani, nope. So out of that list, I mean, for Juventus, I mean, Jesus is not going to be there for a long time. If they want to get Sia, that is a younger prospect. Mateta is in his prime right now, same with Soloth. So, I mean, I don't care about who they sign, but if they want Jesus, it's going to cost them between 20 to 25 million euros. But obviously, whoever they decide to sign is definitely going to affect us. If they decide to go for Jesus and the others are a bit unattainable, then you're going to get around 25 million euros. I don't think Jesus will be here next season. There's like a 95% chance he won't be here next season. So let's see if we can get good money for him. So we're definitely starting to hear more in terms of the transfers, in terms of the players who could be coming in, who could be leaving. The World Cup is starting tomorrow. The transfer window is starting on Monday. It's opening on Monday. And then from that point on, we're going to start hearing news about players like Ben White. We're going to start hearing news about players like Livramento, you know. Are we going to hear more on Morgan Rogers? Or are we going to have to wait until after the World Cup? All that it's going to be very interesting. So let me know all of that. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch up with you guys on the next one.